Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. In the last one, I took a look at Iron Man's uniform and how much better he got with it, as well as the differences that level 70 to 72 made and 72 to 80. In this one, I'm taking a look at Black Widow's changes with her new uniform and seeing how it compares with her old black suit in PvE and how it holds up to the white suit in PvP. When the teasers dropped for this update, many people, including myself, weren't too thrilled that Iron Man and Black Widow were getting another uniform since they already have so many, but after testing this one, I'm kind of glad that she did get another one. To put it very simply, this uniform is basically as if the black suit and the white suit were combined. She does lose some aspects of each uniform, but overall it does make her much better. With the new uniform, you have a lot of build options that you can go with if you want to build the character primarily for PvE. She does have guaranteed crit rate, so you can go with the Rage, and I'm pretty sure that will be the best option for things like ABX if you choose to use the character there, or more importantly for things like Giant Boss Raid. Her ultimate can also be delayed cancel to an extent, so if you want to maximize the damage from it, then you'll probably have to go with the Rage in order to fit that with the rest of the rotation. However, with that said, she is pretty proc friendly in my opinion, and her rotation is pretty straightforward, so you could easily make something like a CTP of energy work. You could also go with a CTP of destruction, though you won't get any benefit from the penetration from the destruction, since her uniform passive now gives you at least 35% penetration to all sources. The build that I'm using to test this character throughout the video is a mighty CTP of Greed. Because the CTP has a 150% proc that activates every other proc, it's basically as if I'm running the character with a 75% damage proc obelisk. So you can just take that into consideration when seeing the clear times. The ignore dodge also helps, so it's not exactly the same thing, but you get what I mean. For the rest of the build, I have all mythic Urus, but no Odins and no artifact. With no leadership or supports, I'm able to clear a stage 9 of Knull in 2 minutes and 30 seconds roughly. I wanted to compare the clear time for the black suit on a stage 29, but with the old uniform, I was barely able to clear the halfway mark before time ran out. I basically finished the first phase with 18 seconds to spare, which means that I wouldn't have been able to clear the stage with the old uniform, since you usually need to get to the halfway mark with about 3 minutes to spare at the very minimum. With the new uniform, however, at that 2 minute and 18 second mark, I was 11 damage bars ahead. Then 2 minutes and 6 seconds later, I was able to finish the stage completely with 12 seconds to spare. The rotation for the character is pretty simple and straightforward. You open with the 4th skill and immediately cancel that into the 3rd skill, which you then immediately cancel into the 5th skill. The 1 and 2 are filler, and the 5th skill is the one that you want to proc on. Once you have access to the ultimate skill or the 6th skill, the rotation basically becomes 4, cancel 3, cancel 6, and 6 is the skill that you want to proc on in that case. The reason that you want to do these skills in this order is because the 4th skill gives you a damage buff across all of your skills, the 3rd skill then gives you a 100% damage increase to the next skill that you cast, so you can transfer that damage proc onto the 5th skill, which is the hardest hitting skill. Just keep in mind that when you use the 3rd skill, you have to cancel very quickly into the 5th skill, otherwise if any hits happen between the 3 to 5, then that 100% damage proc will get wasted, since it'll only apply to whatever that hit was and not transfer over to the 5th skill. I didn't test this out in the video, but one thing to keep in mind is that the 3rd skill now also has all defense down that ignores immunity, so if you use the character in content with World Boss Ultimate, she should be a lot better than the black suit there as well. I also took the character into ABX for the Speed Hero Female restriction equivalent, and she actually did surprisingly well since I was able to score in the 8.6 million range. She has paralysis on her 3rd and 5th skill, so it allows you to use her during the paralysis season, but there are so many good contenders for the Speed Hero Female restriction that I doubt she'll get much usage, but if you don't have many good characters for that day, then she is a possible character for it, even if you don't have a damage proc build. Considering I was able to score so high with basically no Odins and no Rage, I would suspect that a person with a maxed out build should be able to score in the 10 million range pretty easily and probably push higher up towards the 11 million mark with a very top end build. Although the character is pretty decent in PvE, I think that the place that she really shines is in PvP. Although there are some negatives to the new uniform, such as the fact that she lost her super guard break immunity, which was not really ever detailed in the white suit or the black suit, but was kind of there behind the scenes. She also lost her lingering iframe, which she gained from that smoke bomb effect on the white suit, but in turn she does have way more burst damage, which in my opinion is much better now since a lot of characters have iframe ignore, and that lingering iframe isn't as good as it used to be. The AI's rotation is actually pretty good as well. It goes straight for the third skill, which is that iframe ignore, and has that 100% damage proc on it, which combined with something like a CTP of Greed usually means that the character one-hits any opponent. After that, the AI usually goes into the fourth skill, which is also pretty decent since it gives you an additional damage buff, and then follows up with the fifth skill, which is also good because it gives you the healing after you've been in the fight for a period of time. The only unfortunate thing is that a lot of her skills have kind of long animations, but oftentimes the opponent will knock you out of those animations, allowing the character to kind of go through each skill fairly quickly. Another really nice thing I notice about these skills is that they have pretty high skill priority, meaning that they'll activate very quickly, usually before the other opponents. And the third skill has a very unique effect in that it repositions you through the iframe ignore, meaning that oftentimes if there is a cone or straightforward attack to your character, your Black Widow will jump over that character if they're close enough and avoid most of the damage. In addition to that repositioning effect and the high skill priority, the skill also has super guard break penetration, which can lock down your opponent, as you're seeing with the head rocking effect on Thanos. Besides that, the skill also has a short cooldown, meaning that the AI can constantly spam this and oftentimes doesn't really need to use any of the other skills to beat an opponent. In terms of builds, you can build Black Widow either offensively or defensively, since she does have pretty decent survival with her repositioning, her iframes, and her high dodge and guaranteed dodge. And considering that her burst damage is so high, oftentimes you'll kill the opponent, meaning that you won't have to worry about taking damage at all. In many ways, her third skill is very similar to Adam Warlock's second skill in that she'll activate it, and with a damage proc, you should be able to take out the opponent right away with just that skill alone. Because of that, I went with the CTP of Greed myself, and since her survival isn't too bad, she can also fill up that ambush effect to give her a little bit more survival because she won't be super guard broken, and she'll end up doing more damage to the opponents that have very high mitigation. If you don't like the risk reward of using a damage proc, then I would probably recommend a CTP of Authority as the alternative, specifically one with the steal effect, since once she dodges she can gain up to 40% mitigation, and combined with that steal effect it can go pretty high, but also because her base health is kind of low, so a CTP of regen might not work as well, considering that you won't get too much out of the health shield. That said, if you don't have many authorities, a CTP of regen might be a decent second option, since she does have 30% heal on her fifth skill, and with the high recovery from regen, you can sort of double that to 60%, which is a pretty good heal amount. I didn't really have a lot of time to test her out in Alliance Conquest, but I was able to get at least 4 matches in, and as you can see from the first clip, the CTP of Greed works pretty well, considering that it can take out all of the opponents very quickly, but she does struggle a little bit versus any characters that have immortality or can revive and have iframe ignore effects. As I recommended in the builds earlier, you can potentially use a CTP of Authority to help her survival after she takes out the opponent, but without using that CTP of Greed, it's not guaranteed that you can take out some of the bigger meta characters that have a lot of health. As you can see from the clips though, I'm only testing out her solo capabilities, and she is more than able to take out all of these opponents by herself. So all you really need to do is account for the survivability by putting another character that has high survivability with her. Overall, I'd say I'm really pleased with this uniform since it is a solid upgrade over the white uniform, considering how easy it is to take out meta characters with that third skill now. She's already performing really well in Alliance Conquest, being able to take out top metas or at least wiping them just by herself, meaning that once I pair her with a strong team, she should be able to survive and take out the opponent relatively quickly, which means that she'll probably be meta for Alliance Conquest, and in timeline, based on the ban restrictions, she could be a good alternative to Spider-Man when you're facing versus those strong blast types like Warlock and Emma. The character has never really been in the spotlight for long. Even with the synergy uniforms that she got, she didn't do too much in PvE and only was in PvP for about a week or so before Hulk came around to hard counter her. So if you're a big fan of Black Widow, then I would highly recommend picking up this uniform since she is much better in PvE now and is a pretty formidable threat in things like Timeline, but more so in Alliance Conquest. That wraps up the video review for Black Widow, and I have to say that if she does get a T4 next, she could be a pretty big threat in PvP content, considering how easy it is for her to take out opponents as is, and with the stat bump, her survival will get even higher, not to mention that her damage will increase as well, meaning that more of her skills could potentially be one-hit kills. Let me know what you think about Black Widow's new uniform yourself, either from your own testing or from what you saw in this video, and if the video did help you out, please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing the video since it really helps me out. As always, thank you for your time and watching, but the video is now over.